Do you have to disclose a death in a house here in Idaho? I'm gonna break it down for you in this video. But first, my name's Greg Langham. I'm an associate broker here in the Boise, Idaho area. So if you're thinking about coming to the Boise, Idaho area, pick up the phone, give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email so that we can connect and put a game plan together that's right for you. If you're ready to learn what you should know about death in a house before you buy it, I'm ready to teach it to you. So let's go! Okay, so this video topic came from something that happened with a client of mine. They were buying a home here in Idaho from out of state, and I offered to go out and shoot it for them and give them, you know, the walkthrough and all that stuff. And I did that, and the house was awesome, but there was still like a lingering question in the back of my client's mind. I said, man, you know, why hasn't this sold yet? It's a great house. It's a good location. Like, price seems decent, you know, for everything that's going on. And I'm like, hey, yeah, it does seem a little interesting to me as well. Let me inquire on that. And so I reached out to the realtor, and the realtor was like, yeah, it's a great house, you know, remodel a little bit. You know, I'm like, why hasn't it sold? He's like, well, I think people are hesitant because someone passed away in the house, and you know, that for whatever reason, they're just not like feeling it. There's no, I don't know, the vibes, I don't know. But I was just like, oh man, okay. Like, and so when I relayed that to my client, you know, it kind of like caused a discussion, like, whoa, who was that? How did they die? You know, was it just of old age and they passed away? That happens. That's very common, right? You have parents, grandparents who've done that. Was it like a crime? Like, was it domestic? Like, what is going on? You know, and what do the sellers have to disclose here in Idaho if there was a death inside the home? Because a lot of states vary based off of the different laws. So I went ahead and did some digging. I wrote a blog about it, and I'll put that on my screen here if you want to go and read the blog. I kind of went deep on it, but I'll just kind of give you the information here in this video so that you can, you know, kind of hear it and see kind of what's going on. So in Idaho, the law's pretty relaxed when it comes to this. If someone passed away peacefully in the home or of natural causes, you know, the seller doesn't need to disclose that in a formal disclosure at all. Now, if you know, there's a violent death like a murder or a suicide, you know, still Idaho is pretty relaxed and doesn't require you to disclose that. Now, as you negotiate, as you dig a little bit deeper, back and forth, you know, it's always gonna come up at some point, right? If there's questions asked. But on the disclosure forms here in Idaho, when there has been a death or violent crime or suicide, you are still not required to disclose that in the seller disclosures. The only time that you really are required to bring it up is if it's asked. Then you are required to bring that up. But it's, you know, if you're never asked for it, it's not public knowledge. You know, like here in Idaho, that horrific, you know, Lori Daybell in eastern Idaho, right? That was awful, right? So they totally disclosed that when they sold the property. Everyone knew what happened at that property, so it got bulldozed and stuff. But unless it's public knowledge, or you directly ask the seller, was there a suicide or a crime occurred, you're not required to disclose that. The seller's not going to be legally on the hook unless they do have knowledge and it was asked to them directly. Hey, what happened on this house? You know, stuff like that. But sellers legally are not going to be held liable if that question was never brought up, it was never asked. But that being said, I am a huge fan of just being upfront about it. You know, like if I'm the realtor and I have that knowledge, I'm gonna disclose that to the buyers, because I don't want that buyer to go ahead and start putting their house on the market, you know, get into escrow. My clients, if I'm representing the seller, start packing and moving things, just to have it come up later during escrow. And, you know, the seller knew this, and I knew it as a realtor, and I didn't disclose that. So I'm just a big fan of open transparency, making sure that both parties are aware of the circumstances. Now, sellers are private, right? Sellers don't have to disclose that, but if asked, and I would ask, you know, if there's a home that just is like, why has this been on the market for so long? You know, that's definitely a question I'm gonna ask. You know, if the market's moving fairly fairly quickly here like it is in Idaho, and let's say the average day on market's 30 days, and there's a home sitting for 180 days, it's not in foreclosure, it's not behind, it's not in short sale status, it's just a traditional home, that's definitely a red flag that I'm gonna bring up and say, hey, you know, maybe you're not thinking about this buyer, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask and see if this is why this home hasn't moved, and that way we can have a conversation. But in Idaho, you really don't have to disclose that. But like I said, if the seller is asked directly by the buyer or the buyer's agent and there is knowledge, they are required to disclose that. So I know like they don't have to be forthcoming about it, but if they are asked, they are required to disclose that, and they will be held liable if they omit that in the discovery process when you're doing your due diligence and just inquiring about the home. So you are protected as a buyer as long as you are the one who brings that up, and the seller and the seller's agent, they are required to disclose that. Now, as a buyer, can you find out this information on your own, or are you just having to rely on a seller? I'm gonna share with a great website for you to go to towards the end of this video, but just hang with me a little bit longer because each state has different laws. So I'm curious to know what your law requires. Do you know? If so, drop it in the comments. I'm curious to read those. Now, I'm gonna go on a limb here. I think California does require you to disclose of any deaths in the past 3 years, even if it's natural causes. I know that Alaska and South Dakota, they require disclosure of murder or suicide if they happened within the past year. So those are some interesting laws that I think are great. I think people should know that. I think that's a good thing to know because, you know, there's superstitions about buying a home, right? If the front door faces a certain way, or, you know, in Idaho, right, we want our house to kind of face the driveways to face the east, so we get that snow melt, or the south, so we get that snow melt in the winter. So there's certain things about houses that you kind of want to know about, and a death in a home is something that I think everyone should know about, even though in Idaho our laws are pretty loose. But like Idaho, it's like a lot of the other states. So Idaho, even though we have loose laws, a lot of the other states do. It's a don't ask, don't tell type of law, which is interesting to me. But if you do have knowledge, you know, it's the right thing to do to disclose that. But when you are asked, you are required to disclose that. So it's kind of a weird thing where, you know, does the seller have to disclose that? Like, would you want to disclose that if you're trying to maximize the sale of your home and get the most money out of it? I don't know. It can go back and forth. It's a moral thing, but I choose to lean towards, you know what? Let's just be upfront about everything. Let's just get it all on the table. Here's the situation. Maybe you price it accordingly to the situation. But like I said, it's a don't ask, don't tell. So, you know, there's that gray area that allows people to kind of choose whether they want to disclose that or not. So if you're a seller and you are listing your home and you have an agent, and the agent never asks you, hey, you know, was there a death in this house, and it never comes up, then, you know, the seller technically isn't liable to disclose that. They don't have to do that. If you're a buyer's agent and you're representing the buyer, you know, how many people actually think like, okay, because in Idaho, our seller disclosures are very, you know, minimal. You know, it's based off of your knowledge of what the house has been through and what you've done and repaired, what's broken, what's been fixed. So it's based purely off your knowledge. Well, I know in other states, the disclosures are very detailed. So it is interesting here in Idaho, but like I said, if you're at the end of this video, I was going to give you the website that you can go to check to see if there's been anything going on at that house that maybe you're interested in checking out or learning about as a buyer and not having to rely on the seller. So let's get to that website right now. Okay, so before I give you that website, if you have any desire to get on the phone, book a Zoom call with us and just learn about Idaho, learn about us, you're thinking about buying or selling or thinking about coming to Idaho, pick up the phone, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email so that we can connect and learn about you and work a plan based off your timetable. But now, the website that you go to check out to see if there's anything fishy going on, if there's anything like crazy happening on a home that you're interested in checking out, it's called www.diedinhouse.com. www.diedinhouse.com. it will pull the records. It will show you everything that maybe had occurred that's, you know, in that home. You have to do a little bit of digging, but it's better to be proactive than reactive, right? So I hope this video was informative. Let me know down in the comments what your take is. If you're a seller, should you disclose that, yes or no? If you're a buyer, you know, are you gonna be more forthright in asking the sellers that? Did this sway your opinion one way or the other? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to talking to you about your move or your sell of your property here in Idaho.